People ask me this, probably more than anything else, who did I hate playing the most? And I want to be careful with that word, hate, because it's a strong one, and I don't think it means what most people assume it means when it comes to sports. It doesn't mean I wish them harm. It doesn't mean I didn't respect them. It means something closer to, dread, I think. That particular feeling you get in your stomach the night before a match when you know what's coming and you know it's going to hurt, and you're going to have to dig somewhere deeper than you planned just to survive the first set. So, let me be honest about this list, because I've never actually sat down and said these names out loud in quite this way before. And the reason is probably that, saying it out loud makes it real. It reminds you of all the matches you lost, all the moments where you ran out of answers, and all the times you walked off a court knowing the other guy just simply had more that day than you did. There are 5 names, and every single one of them made me a different player, whether I liked it or not. Let me start with the one I hated playing most early in my career, and honestly, for a very specific reason. Pete Sampras. Now, look, I know what you're thinking. You're thinking, well, of course, Pete's on this list. That's obvious. That's a rivalry everybody already knows about. And you're right, it's obvious. But the reason I hated it, the real reason, goes deeper than just the losses, and there were plenty of those. What I hated was that Pete made me feel like I was playing against something I couldn't fully see. I'm a baseliner. I stand back there and I read the game, I read the angles, I read what's coming, and I build a plan around what I see. Pete just, he took that away from me. His serve was like a door slamming shut before you even knocked on it. You'd think you'd positioned yourself perfectly. You'd think you'd done everything right in the rally, and then he'd find an angle on a second serve that had no business existing on a tennis court. Wimbledon, 1999, is a match I'll carry with me forever whether I want to or not. I came in off Roland Garros, playing the best tennis of my life, genuinely, and I walked out on that grass thinking I had something for him this time. And I mean, he was untouchable. Not better, untouchable. There's a difference. Better means you found the weakness and it just wasn't enough. Untouchable means you couldn't even locate the weakness. Not one. Not for long enough to matter. I told the press afterward that he played impeccable tennis at the most important moments. And I meant it exactly the way it sounded. It wasn't a compliment wrapped in politeness. It was just the most accurate thing I could say. Some players lift their level under pressure. Pete didn't lift anything. He just lived up there permanently, and you were the one who had to figure out how to get altitude. The second name on this list is one that people don't always expect when they hear it, and that's Boris Becker. And I want to explain this carefully because it's a different kind of hate than Pete. With Pete it was a slow burn, a career-long thing. With Boris, it was immediate, it was physical, it was loud. Boris came at you like the match was already on fire and he was adding more fuel just to watch it burn higher. He was a big man, big serve, big forehand, big presence, and he had this thing where he'd almost intimidate you with his energy before the first ball even left the toss. I was 20 years old the first time I really felt what he could do to a match, and I remember standing on the other side of the net thinking, he's not playing tennis right now. He's performing something, and I'm the audience. What made it so hard? What made it genuinely something close to dread was that Boris was unpredictable in a way that my game wasn't built to handle. I like patterns. I like reading what was coming and being ready for it. Boris had this serve where he'd almost dip his head right before he went wide, and for years, people tried to read it, and I tried to read it too, and it moved differently than it should have. His body would say one thing and the ball would do another. There was a match in the late 80s, early 90s stretch where I'd lost to him a couple of times in a row, and I remember going back to the hotel and just sitting there in complete silence. Not angry, not frustrated in the way that feels productive, just, quiet. The kind of quiet that comes when you've thrown everything you have at something, and it just keeps standing there looking back at you. That's Boris Becker. The third name is one I'll say slowly because it deserves that. Stefan Edberg. And here's the thing about Stefan that made him uniquely difficult for me specifically. He was the anti-Agassi. Everything I was, he was the opposite. I was loud. Stefan was quiet. I played from the baseline. Stefan came to the net. I thrived on pace, on the back and forth of a long rally, on wearing somebody down over 4 or 5 shots. Stefan just, he cut all of that off. He took away the conversation before it started. What I hated, and I mean this genuinely, was that I couldn't find him emotionally. You play someone long enough, you start to read them, you start to feel where they're going mentally, you start to know when they're tight, when they're loose, when they're about to crack. Stefan never cracked. He never showed you enough of himself to find a creak in the wall. He'd come to the net and there'd be this almost eerie calm about him, and it would make you tighten up because you're trying to pass someone who looks like he's already figured out that you can't. He won 2 US Opens. He beat me in a final that I genuinely thought I was ready for. And the part that stayed with me, the part one couldn't shake, was that he didn't beat me with something I hadn't seen before. He beat me with precision, with this almost surgical removal of everything I was trying to build. And somehow that's worse. Somehow losing to perfection that you can actually see clearly is harder to sit with than losing to something mysterious. The fourth name on this list is one that I think surprises people the most, and it surprises them because of how the story ended. Jim Courier. And I want to start by saying that Jim and I came up together. We knew each other as kids. We were in the same junior system. We were trained in the same place by some of the same people. And we saw each other become who we were going to become in real time, side by side, year after year. And that's exactly what made it so hard. Because when you hate playing someone you don't know, it's clean. It's just competition. But when you hate playing someone who knows every single thing about your game because he was standing right next to you while you were building it, that's something messier. That's something that lives closer to the chest. Jim was relentless. That's the word I keep coming back to. Not brilliant in the way Pete was brilliant. Not unpredictable in the way Boris was unpredictable. Just absolutely, stubbornly, almost aggressively relentless. He hit the same ball over and over and over again until you stopped being able to handle it. He'd hit that forehand, that big looping topspin forehand, to your backhand side, rally after rally, game after game, and you'd think, I know what's coming, I know exactly what's coming, and it still wouldn't matter. The 1991 French Open final. That one sits with me differently than most losses, because Jim and I had been circling each other for a while by then, and that was the moment it all came into focus, and it came into focus in his favor. He played that clay the way you're supposed to play clay, which is to say he played it like he owned it, like the surface itself had chosen him before the match even began. I didn't play poorly. I just didn't play well enough. And with Jim, that gap felt enormous. What I'll say about Jim that I don't think gets said enough is that playing him made me angry in a particular way that no other player really managed. Not angry at him, not even really angry at myself. Angry at the situation. Angry that someone who knew me so well, who'd see me in practice, who'd see me on bad days and good days and every kind of in-between day, could still walk out on match day and find places in my game to press on that I hadn't fully protected yet. We talked about it once, not in depth, not the way you might expect two people who came up together to talk about something like that. But he said something that I've thought about a lot since. He said that playing me forced him to be a better version of himself than he probably would have been without me in the draw. And I felt that. I understood it. Because I think the same thing was true in the opposite direction. Jim Courier is a reason I became who I became on a hard court, on clay, in the moments where I had to reach for something I wasn't sure I had. Some rivalries, they sharpen you in ways that are uncomfortable to admit. Because admitting it means admitting how much you needed the person you were trying to beat. The fifth name is the one that feels the most complicated to talk about, and if you follow my career closely, you might already know who I'm going to say. Michael Chang. And I need you to understand that the word hate here is doing the most complicated work it's done on this entire list. Michael was younger than me. He came up behind me, and the first time he really made noise, the 1989 French Open. He was 17 years old, and he beat Ivan Lendl in a match that genuinely changed what people thought was possible in that sport. And I watched that, and I thought, okay, this kid is real. I had no idea yet what that would mean for me personally. What made Michael so uniquely maddening to play was that he gave you nothing to be angry at. Pete was quiet, but there was an elegance to it that you could at least appreciate even when it was killing you. Boris was loud, and you could channel your frustration into the noise. Michael was just, he was just there. Every ball, every single ball came back. You'd hit a winner, a real winner, and somehow he'd be there. You'd go up the line with everything you had, and he'd be there. You'd go cross-court and change the angle, and he'd be there. He ran down balls that had no business being run down. And he'd do it without any expression on his face that told you it cost him anything. That's a thing that got into your head, the complete absence of complaint. Because when a player shows you they are struggling, you gain something from that. You gain momentum. You gain belief. Michael never gave you that. He just reset. Every point, every game, just reset and came right back at you. There was a match. I won't even go into the specific details of it. Where I had him, I genuinely had him, and I felt it slipping anyway. Not because he did anything dramatic. Not because he hit some bolt out of nowhere shot that changed everything. Just because he stayed. He just kept staying in the match, and eventually staying became winning, and I walked off that court thinking, I don't know how to beat someone who refuses to stop showing up. People ask me now, if I could go back and replay any of those matches, which ones would I choose? And honestly, I'm not sure I would. Not because I made peace with all the losses. Some of them still sit uncomfortably even now, decades later. But because every one of these 5 players pulled something out of me that I didn't know was there until I was desperate enough to find it. Pete made me work harder on my serve than any other motivation in my life ever could have. Boris made me quicker mentally, more ready to adjust mid-match. Edberg made me more disciplined. Courier made me more resilient on clay than I ever thought I'd be. And Chang made me patient, which for someone like me, for the way I played the game, was maybe the hardest thing any opponent could have taught me. So when people ask who I hated playing the most, I'm really being asked who changed me the most. And the answer is all 5 of them. Every single one. Because the matches you dread the most are usually the ones that end up meaning the most when you look back from the other side of it all. And, honestly, I'd line up to play every one of them again tomorrow, even knowing exactly what was coming.